Do you need assistance not addressed in this video? Have you watched the video but you're still having problems? Please contact us anytime by writing to info@bafxpro.com.
The Bafx Products hiking poles are a twist lock style of aluminum hiking pole, meaning that they lock and unlock by twisting the sections of each pole. The main sections of the pole here are made with lightweight aluminum, and each pole in its entirety weighs approximately 12 to 12.5 ounces each, and the pole can be extended in length from about 26.5 inches when fully collapsed to approximately 53 inches when fully extended. It also comes with a padded wrist strap, which can be lengthened or shortened according to your needs, as well as an ergonomic and ribbed grip for hiking. And it also has a foam carrying grip for when you're just walking around town, not actually using your poles, but you want to carry them to make things a little more comfortable for you there. Each pole also has a carbide tip on the very end of it for hiking over surfaces such as ice or possibly gravel paths where you want to dig in a little more. And each pole also comes with a rubber tip on the end, as well as a spare rubber tip for each pole for hiking over surfaces such as maybe asphalt or concrete, or even tiles in your home if you're using them around your home. And then each pole also comes with one round mud or snow disc that goes on the end of your pole like so, and that helps prevent your pole from sinking into the mud or snow on those types of terrains. When you receive your Bafx Products hiking poles, inside the bag you should find 2 hiking poles attached to the wrist strap of each hiking pole. You should also find a mud or snow disc attached to the strap, and then you will also find 4 rubber tips, one already installed on the end of each pole, and then 2 spare ones in the bag. The first thing we're going to go over is how to lock and unlock your hiking poles and extend and collapse the hiking poles. The first thing I need to note is that common misconception is that these black pieces here are the actual locks themselves. They are not. They're there to help you with the locking and unlocking procedure. However, they themselves do not turn to lock and unlock the pole. Rather, your lock is located on the end of each section and is up inside of the pole. So, to unlock your pole and extend it, you'll take the upper section of your pole in your left hand, and then grab this second black piece here with your right hand and rotate the second black piece counterclockwise until you feel it loosen. You can keep going a little extra just to be sure, and then pull it out, and once you're extended to your desired length, turn the lower section clockwise to lock the pole into place. Now repeat the same steps for the lowest section of your pole. Rotate counterclockwise, extend, and rotate clockwise to lock. A very important feature on your hiking poles are the stop markings. If you unlock your pole and pull the lower section out, you'll notice that there is a stop marking almost near the top of the lower section. This stop marking is there to tell you not to extend your pole beyond that length. So, if you're extending your hiking poles and you see this stop marking, you've pulled the lower section out too far, you need to push it back in so that stop marking is not visible and lock in place there. If you lock your hiking pole with the stop marking showing, say for example here, you lose a lot of stability in the pole. As you can see, it's kind of wiggling back and forth here, and your pole will snap probably in less than a mile. This also means do not extend it to here, do not extend it to here. Always extend your pole so that that stop marking is hidden. So right there is okay, there is not okay. This is also, you also have one of these stop markings on the middle section of your pole, right here. And you should never use your pole with either of these sections having that stop marking showing. So for the middle section, here is not okay, here is not okay, that is good. That is the furthest you should ever lock the middle section of your hiking pole. So you're probably wondering, what height do you set your hiking pole at? We get this question quite a bit. It's really a matter of personal preference. However, there are some general guidelines you can use if you're really not sure. If you're going to be hiking over a flat level terrain, you want to set your hiking pole so that when your pole is straight up and down and your arm at your side, your elbow forms approximately a 90-degree angle. If you're going uphill, you'll want your hiking pole a little bit shorter, generally speaking, so that you can reach ahead of you and kind of pull yourself up the hill. So you'll want your elbow at a greater than 90-degree angle. If you're going downhill, you'll normally want to set your pole a little longer so that your elbow is at less than a 90-degree angle, and that way you can reach ahead of yourself and bring yourself down the hill. One of the first things you'll notice about your hiking poles is that the middle section has numbers going up and down it, and the lower section does not. These numbers are there so that you can quickly and easily adjust your poles to your preferred height every time you head out on a hike without having to sit and guess. To use these numbers correctly, these numbers are always based on the lower section of your pole being fully extended. So every time you set your hiking pole, if you extend the lowest section of the pole just so that the stop marking is just inside of the upper section so that it's not showing, and lock it right there, your lower section will always be at the same length. And then you can set your upper section at whatever your desired height is each and every time, and have a consistent height every time you go out on a hike. So for me, if that's 1200, I can quickly in a few seconds adjust my pole to my preferred height and get out on the trail. We get a lot of questions about what tip do I use? Do I use the rubber tip that came on the end of the pole, or should I use the carbide tip that's underneath? Really, it's all just a matter of your personal preference. What do you like more? Generally speaking, the carbide tip is going to be good for things if you're hiking over ice. It's going to allow you to dig into that ice. It's not going to slip on the ice as much. It might be better for gravel paths so it doesn't slip on the rocks. Where this rubber tip on ice, it's going to slip across the top of the ice, or it could slide across small rocks and stuff like that. So if you're on gravel or icy path, your carbide tip might be better. If you're hiking over soft terrain like a dirt path, a hard dirt path, or if you're going over concrete, something like that, the rubber tip might be better, because on concrete the rubber tip's going to give you more of a grip, and over a hard dirt path or a grassy field, the carbide tip might sink into the ground, whereas the rubber tip isn't going to do that. Like I said, it's really all just a matter of your personal preference, but those are some general rules of thumbs how you want to kind of look at it. Another thing to keep in mind, there are some places that will forbid you from using the carbide tip on them. Usually these are places like some certain national parks. I believe part of the Appalachian Trail has rules against using the carbide tips or metal tips in certain areas. The reason for that is there can be a lot of flat rocks that are part of the national park, and using the carbide tip on that can scratch up the rock a little bit. So if you're going on a trail, especially in the national park, just check their hiking rules and see if they say anything about what kind of tip you need to use in certain areas. So how long are your tips going to last? That's going to vary a lot. It really depends on how much weight you're putting on each pole with each step, how hard you're hitting the ground with the pole, what type of surface you're hiking over. They could last anywhere from 1 mile to 20 or more miles. So for example, if you're hiking up a concrete hill and you're really putting a lot of weight on the whole poles to help push yourself up, those tips aren't going to last very long, maybe a mile, maybe 2 miles. If you're hiking through a nice, soft, grassy field and it's a leisurely walk, they could last you 20 or more miles easily. It really all just depends on the type of terrain you're going over. So generally what we like to tell people is your poles come with 2 sets of tips, which should be enough to get you started for the first hike or two. But if you're going to be hiking more than that, you're going to want to buy some spares because they will wear out with time, and who knows where you'll be hiking, what type of terrain you'll be on, and you're going to need a few extras. So I always take at least 1 extra pair with me when I'm hiking. If I'm going on an all-day hike, I probably take 2 or 3 extra pairs just in case, or in case I lose one along the way. It does happen sometimes, so yeah, just keep in mind what type of surface you'll be hiking over, and take spare tips according to that. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the grips on your hiking poles and the wrist straps. The top grip here is obviously going to be used when you're out hiking on the trails. A lot of people wonder what the foam grip beneath it is for. This grip isn't to be used when you're out hiking on the trails, rather it's there so that if you're not using your hiking poles and you've reached wherever you're going and you're just walking around, you can hold it by this, and it makes carrying your hiking poles a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more balanced and easier to carry. So that's what that foam grip is for. Now with your wrist straps, these are obviously completely optional. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. If you don't use them, just put your hand on the grip and let it hang out there and off you go. If you do want to use the wrist strap, all you need to do is, with your wrist strap hanging there, reach your hand in from the bottom up like that and fit it around your wrist where it's going to be comfortable, and then bring your hand down so that the strap goes between your thumb and index finger, and then wrap your hand around the grip. So again, you come in from the bottom of the strap and then reach down so that the strap is between your thumb and index finger and grab your grip. The wrist strap length is adjustable depending on how big your wrist is, if you're wearing gloves, anything like that. To adjust your wrist strap, if you want to make it shorter, you're just going to take this upper strap portion here and pull it out, and that will shrink the size of your wrist strap. You'll notice there's a little black piece that might pop out there. You're going to need to let that come out a little bit so that you can pull that out, and then you just push that back in to lock your strap into place. If you want to make the wrist strap longer, simply grab the lower portion of the strap here and pull out to your desired length. We get some questions about what the anti-shock feature is in the hiking pole. The anti-shock feature is located on the top portion of the middle section of your pole, and it is this spring right here. What that does is when your pole is fully locked and properly locked, and you press down on the pole like this, it will pop back up. This is there so that every time you place your pole on the ground, it absorbs some of the shock so that you don't feel it in your elbows and your wrist. Now we're going to go over some quick care and cleaning tips. If you're out hiking in a dusty environment or a dirty environment, a muddy one, or if you're hiking through small streams or rivers, it's very important to clean your hiking pole thoroughly at the end of each hike. Otherwise, what can happen is some of the silt from the streams or the dust can get up inside the upper sections of the pole and get stuck in your lock and cause things to seize up. Especially if you are, if your pole is dirty and you collapse the pole, you're shoving that dirt into the upper section of the pole. It's going to get all over the lock, and it could cause it to seize up later next time you go to use the pole. So if you've been through a particularly dirty hike, dusty hike, or you've gone through streams and rivers, at the end of the hike you're going to want to fully disassemble your pole and give it a good cleaning so that none of that dust or silt from the stream gets stuck on the lock of your pole. So to do that, just fully separate your hiking pole, take a damp cloth, wipe everything down real good, and then you can even run a little warm water up into the upper section of your pole, shake it around, drain it out. Do the same with the middle section of the pole, and then leave your pole out overnight to dry off so that the moisture doesn't get stuck up in there. Once it's fully dry, just reassemble your pole again, and you should be good to go. Like I said, this is really important if you've been hiking through streams, rivers, or just in a very dusty, dirty environment, so that your pole doesn't sit and seize up later on down the road. A question we get asked a lot about our hiking poles is, can I take them with me on the airplane? Can I put them in my checked baggage? Can I carry them on the plane? And unfortunately the answer is no. Current TSA guidelines prohibit you from carrying the hiking poles on the plane or carrying them in your checked baggage either. According to the TSA, your hiking poles could be considered a weapon, so they need to be stored in your checked baggage. For most checked baggage, they will fit. When fully collapsed, they're approximately 26.5 inches or so. And they'll add about, 1.5 pounds of weight to your overall baggage. That said, if your suitcase is just a little too small for the 26.5 inch length, you can choose to fully separate the pole, which will save, about 4 to 5 inches of length additional. So if you pull the pole completely apart, you're going to save some additional length. It will add a little more volume to your suitcase, but it'll shorten the length to help get it in there. If that doesn't work, try setting it diagonally, but unfortunately these do have to go into your checked baggage. So you're having a problem with your rubber feet falling off the ends of the hiking poles. Really, this definitely shouldn't happen. Before you head out on every hike, make sure that your rubber tip is on fully and securely. If you're just putting the tip on like that, it's going to come off pretty darn easy, and you are probably definitely going to lose the tip. So before you head out on a hike, make sure you really push it on there good. Maybe even give it a little turn while you press. It's only held on by friction, but when it's on there fully, it's actually going to take quite a bit of force to pull it off. So, like that. So when your tip's on fully, it's going to be hard to pull off and you're not going to lose it on the trail. But if you're just kind of pressing it on like that, not really giving it much thought, it's going to come off pretty darn easy. The other thing is if you're hiking through muddy areas or something like that, or really tall grass, you might want to consider removing the tip so you don't lose it. If you're hiking through mud, the mud's going to create suction on the bottom of the tip, and if you're going through a lot of it, it could eventually pull that tip off. Or if you're hiking through really tall grass, the tall grass could get wrapped around the end of your pole here. It could snag the tip off that way. But generally speaking, your tips shouldn't fall off so long as you make sure to press them on nice and hard like that, and then they're going to be pretty darn hard to pull off. Oh no, I broke my pole. No, not really. I didn't. Your poles can separate like this if this happens when you're adjusting the height, or you need to take them apart for triangling. Your pole isn't broke. They're meant to come apart like that. They need to be able to come apart like that so they can be cleaned. And it should be fairly easy to put back together. All you need to do to put your pole back together is make sure that your white locking piece here is in the fully collapsed position. Right now it's collapsed. If it was in the expanded position, you'll see it's kind of splayed apart here. So if it's like that, just rotate it so that it's fully collapsed and it's a nice cylinder shape. And then all you need to do is reinsert the lower section into the upper section. Sometimes this can be a little tricky because it is a tight fit, but just try and hold that white piece steady, insert it into the upper section. Once you have it inserted, push the lower section in. You might need to wiggle the lower section back and forth a little bit while you push in, and it should slide right back in. So you're spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning your pole to try and get it to lock, but it's just not locking, no matter how much you spin it. What's going on? Well, probably what's happened is your locking mechanism probably came off its threading. You'll note that the threading the locking mechanism sits on has a space here without any threading. That is to help try and prevent the lock from coming off inside of the upper section when you're loosening it. However, sometimes when it hits this unthreaded section right here, it might get stuck and you won't be able to lock it. Generally speaking, this is a rather easy fix. If you simply pull the lower section out from the upper section and then just press down on the white lock here a little bit, just a light pressure, and spin it, you should be able to reseat that nut onto the threads and your lock should now be working properly again. Simply put your lock back in the collapsed position like this, reinsert the lower section into the upper section, and now you should be able to lock your poles. So you're trying to lock your pole and it just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning, so you pull your pole apart to take a look and see what's going on, and you realize you don't have a lock on the end of your pole. The white plastic piece is missing. There is usually a black C-clamp on the end of the threading to stop this from happening, though sometimes with use and a lot of hard pounding of the pavement that might come off, and then you end up with something like this. Usually when this happens, that means your lock is somewhere stuck up inside of the pole. Should be a pretty easy fix. The first thing you can try doing is tapping your pole like that, see if it'll come out. It probably won't. Sometimes it will. If it doesn't, the easiest way to fix this is just to reinsert the lower section into the upper section all as far as it'll go, and while you push the lower section into the upper section, turn the lower section in the clockwise direction, and now pull your pull back out, and there's your lock. Now all you need to do is reset your lock, make sure that it's functioning properly as it should, and reinsert the lower section into the upper section, and you're good to go. So you've just gotten back from a hike and you want to collapse your poles, but you're having a hard time getting them to unlock. You're trying to turn them and they just won't turn to unlock. You can't collapse them, and you can't really travel with them fully extended like this. So what do? Generally what causes this is you get them nice and locked tight before you head out on the hike, and then with a lot of pounding on the pavement throughout your hike, the lock tightens up a little bit more than when you had left. Usually it's pretty easy to fix. Obviously make sure your hands are nice and dry before you try doing it. But if that doesn't work, just find something such as an oven mitt with a nice silicone coating inside of it to help you get a good grip on the pole. Or you could even use something like my very rusty pair of pliers here to help make it work. Usually oven mitts or something with a little bit of tackiness to them are enough to help get a good grip on the pole and be able to loosen the pole. If it's not, however, and you feel you need to resort to using a pair of pliers, generally speaking, the best way to do this so you don't ding up your pole is to hold the grip of the pole in your left hand and then use the pliers on the black plastic piece of the lower section there, like that, and rotate that way and slide back. And if you are also having issues with the lowest section of your pole, then might be a good time to use one pair of pliers up here and one pair down here to rotate and push it back in. So you've run into a problem where you feel like you've tightened the pole as much as you possibly can, but the pole is still sliding down when you're hiking, and no matter how hard you tighten it, you can't seem to get it to lock properly. Usually this can be a pretty easy fix. What that means is that there may be a little bit of moisture, condensation or something stuck up inside of the pole, or if your poles are brand new and you haven't even used them yet, there might still be a little lubricant left in the pole or on the pole from the manufacturing process that just needs to be wiped off. So the first thing to do when you're having this problem is on the lower section, just take a paper towel and wipe it down. But the next thing you need to do is just take a few pieces of paper towel and twist them so it's kind of in a long rope like this. And then in your upper section, insert that long twisted piece of paper towel and just insert it in there and as far as you can, and just spin it around a few times, pull it, push it in and out a little bit, spin it around a little more, pull it back out. That should get any of the crud that's in there, or water or anything like that, out of there. And then maybe leave your poles sit out for a couple hours to dry out in case there was any water in there. And that should get anything in there that's preventing it from locking properly to dry out, and then you should be able to slide your poles back together and have them lock properly. Now we're going to show you a little bit about the locking mechanism and how it works, how it goes together, so that if you do run into any problems down the road, you can easily fix them yourself and get back running again. So if you pull your pole apart here, you'll see this white plastic piece on the end. That's your locking mechanism there, and that's the top of the middle section of your pole. And then on the lower section of your pole, that's what your locking mechanism looks like. So pretty similar. The middle section just has the addition of the anti-shock spring there, whereas the lower section of your pole does not. So we will just be demonstrating here with the middle section, since the lock's a little bit bigger and easier to work with. Basically how your lock functions is that when you tighten the pole, the lock spins like this, and you can see it expanding here. It goes down over that metal cone here, which expands it, and then it tightens inside of the upper section, and the friction holds it in place. And then when you unlock the pole, that cone collapses, and now the pole can move freely inside of the upper section. Another thing you'll notice here is that there is a small black C-clamp on the end of the threading there. That is there so that if you're unlocking your poles, you don't accidentally unlock them too far and have this white plastic piece come all the way off and run into problems with that. If that does happen, it's pretty easy to fix, and if that small black C-clamp there gets lost or comes off at all, you can still use your hiking poles without it. Really not a big deal. So the way your lock here goes together is there are two halves held together by a black rubber band, and those two halves sit over this nut, and this nut is what drives your locking mechanism up and down so that it can expand and collapse. If you take these two halves apart, which can be a little tricky to do sometimes, you'll notice there is a groove in here where that nut sits flush, and that nut just sits right in there like that, and then your other half goes over like that. So if you do have to take your locking mechanism apart at all for any reason, to put it back together, and just set that nut in that groove there so that it sits flush, and set your other half on top, so then you have a nice round cylinder there. You'll notice that this piece of plastic here is a bit thinner than this piece down here. You always want the thinner part up facing the top end of the pole. So just put it back on your nut like that. Oops. And then you'll take this black rubber band and again put that back around the two plastic halves to hold everything together. You technically don't need the black rubber band to make this work. Actually, you really don't. But it sure does make getting this back into the upper section of the pole a heck of a lot easier having it there. But if you do break that black rubber band, you could still theoretically put your pole back together without it and use the pole successfully. It's probably just going to be a little bit more of a pain to get your pole back together. So that is how your locking mechanism works and goes back together. I'm the headless guy that's been guiding you through this video. Hopefully you found some information in the video that's helped you out and gotten you out and on the trails. If there's something we missed or something we went over just isn't working right for you, drop us a line so that we can help you out. That's what we're here for, and we want to do everything we can to get you out on the trails as quickly as possible. You can reach us by sending us an email at info@bafxpro.com. That's info@bafxpro.com. That should be on the bottom of your screen right now. Or if you just have some comments or suggestions for us, we'd certainly love to hear from you.